In this video, we're going to be looking at some more statistics, and we're going to look at two graphs on the topic of war and death in war deaths. I know, a very happy, positive topic for today's video. Now, the title of this chart here is Combatant Deaths in Conventional Wars from 1800 until 2011. And the subheading of the graph says, the number of combatants who died due to fighting in interstate and civil wars. This includes civilian deaths, which can make the death tolls much larger. So it's not only the soldiers or the combatants, the people fighting in the wars, which are recorded here. It's also civilians who died in these wars. Let's take a look at this chart here. The chart on the top is for interstate wars, which means wars between countries. Whereas the chart on the bottom displays the civil wars, which means wars within the same country. Along the x-axis here we have the years. So the chart goes from 1800 to 2011. Let's take a look at the interstate wars chart first. Different areas of the world are color-coded here at the top. See, they are color-coded. Right on the left side of the chart, we can see the Napoleonic Wars. And according to the chart here, somewhere between 570 to 598,000 people died in the Napoleonic Wars. This was, of course, Napoleon of France, who was trying to invade Europe, basically. And you can see a lot of people died during those wars. Another notable war is the Crimean War here, in which between 142 to 172,000 people died. But really, between 1800 and 1900, really there were lots of wars, but the death tolls were quite low during these wars. You can see we have lots of small wars, but with low death tolls in those wars. That is until around 1916, where we see a dramatic increase in the number of combatant deaths in wars with the arrival of World War I. World War I was a war on a huge scale, and between 7.1 to 8.9 million people died during World War I, according to this chart. And only around 20 years after that, we have the largest war in human history, World War II. According to the data presented in this chart, somewhere between 21 to 30.8 million people died in World War II. Actually, I've heard numbers which are much higher than that. That actually seems to me a little bit low. But we can see that was the largest war in human history. And from that point onwards, from the end of World War II onwards, we have had other smaller wars, but nothing quite on the scale of World War II. Some other notable data points here are the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Korean War, and of course the Vietnam War. The number of deaths in the Vietnam War is surprisingly high, with between 1 to 1.2 million people being killed during this war. So what are the general trends that we can see from this chart, the interstate wars chart? To me, the main trends we have is that between 1800 and 1900, there were a large number of smaller wars, but with small death tolls. Whereas after World War II, we have less wars actually. The number of wars after World War II is lower than before World War II. However, according to the chart, the death tolls of each of these wars was larger. And of course, the most notable data points on this chart are the huge numbers of dead in the World War I and World War II wars. Now then, let's take a look at civil wars. Overall, we can see that the death toll for civil wars on the whole is lower than the death tolls in interstate wars. We can see that between 1800 and 1900, civil wars were quite common. Lots of small civil wars in various different countries. The Venezuelan War of Independence is here, with around 12,000 to 14,800 people dead in this war. And then in approximately 1865, we have the American Civil War, that was between the North and the South of the USA, in which somewhere between 166 to 229,000 people died. After 1900, we have quite a number of smaller civil wars. We have the Russian Civil War, the Spanish Civil War, and the civil war on this chart with the highest death toll is the Chinese Civil War, in which between 1.2 to 2 million people died. Over the past 50 years, from 1960 to 2011, there have not been a large number of civil wars, but we can see some smaller civil wars. For example, the Angolan Civil War and the Bosnian Civil War, both of which occurred between 1980 and 2000. For the second chart, we have a bar chart. Okay, this is a bar chart. And again, it just shows the number of deaths per year in any wars, any kinds of wars around the world. So let's look at on the y-axis, we have the number of deaths in war, ranging from 0 to 5 million at the maximum point. And on the x-axis, we have the year. To me, the main features of this chart are between approximately 1914 and 1920, we can see that there was a sudden spike. There was a sudden spike in deaths in wars, and this is due to World War I occurring during this time. Between approximately 1938 until around 1950, we can see here a dramatic spike in the number of dead people in wars here. This really is a dramatic spike, and during this time period, the number of deaths in wars peaked at around 4.5 million deaths in those wars. Whereas for World War I, the number of deaths peaked at approximately 1.6 million people. As we can see, the wars between 1800 and 1900 and from 1957 onwards, the death tolls of those wars are significantly lower than the death tolls in both World War I and World War II. Thank you for watching this video. I know this is a little bit of a depressing topic or a sad topic. However, I hope that you found some of this data interesting, and I hope that you learned some vocabulary about how to talk about statistics and charts in English. See you in the next one. If you want more videos like this, go to EnglishSponge.com. On the website, you can find videos from many different teachers. You can choose which level you want: A1 beginner, A2 beginner, B1 intermediate, or B2 upper intermediate. You can choose which accent you want to listen to: American, British, Australian, and also other accents. You can choose which topic you want to listen to, and you can choose which grammar point you want to focus on. The website will track your time, so you can see how many minutes you have listened to comprehensible input today, yesterday, and for the whole month. So go to EnglishSponge.com. The link is in the description of the video.